We are going to be talking today about the secret's secret. All right. Now, you may, if you've been around in this country, you remember about 2006 or so, there was a book that came out that got really, really popular in part because Oprah plugged it. When I hear like notes of like, oh boy. It is called The Secret. And it sold over 35 million copies, which is an awful lot of copies, because if you publish a book with an Adventist publishing house and you sell 6,000 to 10,000 copies, you did a phenomenal job. So this is my brief pitch to please read books. Why? People are buying 35 million copies of this other book, and we have a hard time pushing a few thousand. But that's neither here nor there. It was widely read and also widely mocked, as people like to poke fun at it. But there were some very, very devout devotees of this book. In fact, if you go to the website even today, look at all these different formats you can get The Secret in: apps, books, even scrolls. I don't know what that's all about. I don't know what that's all about. But the author actually is still writing these books, these secret books. They're still coming out. And the latest one is called The Greatest Secret. And the trailer for it describes it like this: when you fully recognize who you are, life becomes effortless. There's an ease and a flow that takes over your life. A life of luck and limitation is over forever. You come to know the ultimate power you have over everything in the world. And when we recognize this, ultimate happiness is established forever. And with its establishment comes immortality, unlimitedness, total freedom, and everything else that everyone is asking. Like, by all means, don't carefully define what you're selling here. Ultimately, if you follow her advice, you will get everything else that everyone is seeking. You'll just get everything. Maybe some things you shouldn't be seeking as well. Now look, dunking on The Secret in 2023 is, it feels a little bit unfair because the craze is over and most people by now hopefully see through this kind of toothless pseudo-wisdom literature that it is. So, sometimes we Christians, we get up front and we preach and we dunk on something that happened 50 years ago that nobody really reads anymore. So I understand, we're past this moment. We're not dealing with current events necessarily. So I don't take this whole thing, I don't take this seriously as if it needs like a long refutation, because I think it's transparently silly. But it is important to note what is at stake here. The author believes that just by realizing who you are, you'll get unlimited power or ultimate power. You'll get everything in the world. You'll have power over everything in the world. You'll have ultimate happiness. And then that word I pointed out, immortality. It's like we're back in the garden with a hissing snake saying, you won't really die. You need to take control of your life back from God, make your own decisions for what you think is best, because by submitting to the will of God, you are limiting your potential. So take control over your life, and that's the way you're going to find happiness. It's almost the same advice. In principle, in spirit, the same advice. And so the message that this servant has wanted us to believe from the beginning is that by gaining control, you will have, that is the secret to happiness. Well, in that moment, at least, we did take control. Adam and Eve did take control. And are we happier than they were before? So, the Apostle Paul disputes that we even gained control out of this, because he says things like this: I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. And although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. This passage in Romans 7 is the passage that still resonates with me to this day, because this is the passage I read and I realized I have never read a more perceptive description of the human condition than this. When you look at all the theories of like how humans are wired and how we relate to morality and, did we, evolve like a sense of this moral code and all, like to me, this is simply put, like this is me. I want to do good things, I don't. I want to not do bad things, I still do them. So what is the name of that thing in me that produces this result, this conflict, this war in my soul, and the Bible calls it sin. So that's the name of the thing in me. That's and so I trust if Paul can diagnose what's wrong with me and what I see is wrong with everybody else around me, then I can also trust him to provide the cure. Does that make sense? If you go to 15 doctors and they all kind of give you different opinions about what's wrong with you, but one of them, they say this is what's wrong, and that resonates with you, and you're like, that's it, you're getting it, you get me, that's what's wrong with me. That's also the doctor I'm going to fix it, right? Does that make sense? If Paul can diagnose the problem, then I think we can trust Paul to fix the problem. And of all the things that I've read, this is the most perceptive diagnosis of what's wrong with human beings. It's not that we don't try hard enough. It's not that we haven't given peace a chance. It's that there's something within us that prevents us from being consistent. We all have good intentions. But there's something in us that we just always fall short, or as he put it, evil is right there with me. Evil is right there with me, just dogging me, just nipping at my heels all the time. So Paul gets it. Paul gets it. And this, my friends, is the secret's secret. We never really have control or power over our lives. Even when Adam and Eve said, we're going to go our own way, we don't need God telling us what to do. And that seems like, I'm taking control over our own life. But what does Paul call it? He says, I am sold as a slave to sin. They didn't gain autonomy. They just gained a new master. As the theologian Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody. You got to serve somebody. There's no such thing as human beings taking control over their own lives. We are not independent voters. We are on one side or the other. And that helps clarify things for us, right? About where we stand, about what's going on. We're on one side or the other. So the secret is that we're not really taking control over our own lives. We're really just changing sides. And Paul here gives us the secret to the secret here. He gives us his own version of the secret here in Philippians chapter 4. Here it is. You'll recognize the end of this passage. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned what? To be content whatever the circumstances. It goes on. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret, he says, of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all of this through what? Yeah, I know you want to say it in your version, through Christ who strengthens me, through him who gives me strength. Either way, you get the point. All right? Now keep in mind, we love that verse because it thinks like, I can jump off this cliff and fly safely down below because Christ will give me strength. I can do anything through Christ who strengthens me. This is not what this verse is saying. It's not saying I can jump off this building and fly to OSF downtown because Christ is strengthening me. Can God work that miracle? Of course. But this is not what the verse is encouraging us to do. The verse is in context. The all things that he can do is to learn how to be content in any and every circumstance. And this is really crucial because the secret to happiness is not control, it is contentment. You will be spending if you're trying to get happiness by exerting control over your life, like I finally have enough money to live comfortably, I finally have solved all of my problems so I can be at peace, you will be fighting that battle for the rest of your life. There's no amount of money, there's no amount of talents that you can possess that will ever help you win that battle. If you're seeking control over your own life, autonomy for your own life so that you can master your circumstances and finally find happiness, you will never find it. You will never find it. So long as we are seeking control over our own lives, we will never find happiness because it is a never-ending battle. What Paul says is, instead of seeking to control our lives, we need to learn how to be content within our lives, no matter what happens. Now, this is not the same thing as, say, the Buddhist notion of unattachment. Like, you know, this concept with some of the Eastern beliefs is, I just need to let go of my desire to control things. I just need to not want, to not strive for things. I don't think that that's true at all. I don't think this is what Paul is saying. Notice what he says at the very end. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. In other words, this is not something that I cannot learn to be content in my own strength. It is the grace of God that enables me to be content. Because everything in me rises up when I'm $1 short on that bill. And it takes the grace of God to be like, you know what? Yesterday I had $1 million. Today I have $100. And I want to be content in both days. That is a gift of God. That is not in us. It is not in us. So this is not the same as some of these Eastern notions of like, well, you just need to detach from everything. Paul's not detaching from everything. He has days when he has plenty and he has days when he has little. He's not trying to let go of everything. I'm sure he enjoys. There's times in his epistles where he's asking, like, can I have my cloak? Can I have, thank you for the money that you've sent. He knows that he needs things. And I think like most people, Paul probably wants to live comfortably. He wants to not be in need. That's not that he doesn't want to have things or to have better circumstances. It's just that he has decided to be content no matter what his circumstances are. It's not about controlling the circumstances. It's about how we handle them. And once we let go of trying to orchestrate, of trying to play God with our own lives, we will be so much happier just trusting that there's only one God and he's looking out for us. And when I stop trying to do his job for him, I can just enjoy my job. You don't have to play every role in the movie of your life. Just play the role God has given you and stop worrying about who's funding the movie, what the director's doing, what the script writers are writing. Don't do all of those jobs. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be a very stressful experience. Just play the role that God has given you in your own life. So this is the real secret, that whether we are well-fed or hungry, whether we have a big house or a small house, whether we have a BMW like Lawrence, well, he's not here, okay, or whether we are afflicted with the Prius. Either way. Okay, that's true, Matt. Smart cars are worse, aren't they? But it's a real close race. It's like the Ford Pinto, the smart car, and the Prius. But anyways, this is objective facts. But anyways, whatever it is we drive. Oh, there you are, Lawrence. I worked that BMW in for you, buddy. All right. Didn't see you up there. Thought it was safe. All right. Whatever it is that you have. All right, whether it's the dream car, whether it's not a car with big house, small house, lots of food for Thanksgiving, not a lot of food for Thanksgiving. It's just about learning to be content with what you have. Let me put it a different way. My wife has subscribed to something we call Matthew Plus. Matthew Plus is the additional service that I offer in our marriage where I keep her up to date in what's going on in the world. What's Apple doing? What war, Ukraine, what's the latest on that? This is an additional service that is offered in our marriage. And so sometimes when she doesn't know something happens, she's like, I thought I was subscribed to Matthew Plus. Why did you not keep me informed? I think this is a really good deal because she doesn't have to pay anything for it. And yet here I am scouring the web, finding out what's going on in the world to make sure that she stays, so she doesn't have to do that, okay? It's not. It's mostly free. All right. So she subscribes to Matthew Plus. And our problem is that we want Disney Plus, and we want ESPN Plus, and we want Apple TV Plus, and then on top of that, we want Jesus Plus. And this is where we go wrong with contentment. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, remember, he prayed in the garden, and he said to his Father, Father, if it be your will, key phrase there, let this cup pass from me. Like, I don't want to be crucified. It's a perfectly reasonable request, isn't it? I don't want to be crucified. If there's another way, let's do it. So in this moment, He knows what the Father's will was. It was that he be crucified. He's expressing his will to not be crucified. So we're setting up, under normal circumstances, for a clash here. Whose will is going to win out? But how does he end his prayer? Thy will be done. Father, here's your will. Here's my will. But at the end of the day, I'll get rid of my will and we'll follow your will. This is the secret to contentment. Our problem as believers is that we want Jesus plus. I want to follow what Jesus wants me to do, but also what I want to do. I want his will and my will. And sometimes they can work together, right? And we're like, great, this is working out well. What you want is what I want. So we're following both of our wills. No. We follow his will. And when your will's aligned, that's where we're trying to get to, where our will aligns with the will of God. But we're not in it to follow my will and also his will. We're not part-time. Who are we going with today, Lord? And this is why we often wrestle with contentment, is because I want $1 billion, and Jesus wants me to be something else. And I'm like, can't I just kind of do both? Can't I just straddle this fence? Can I give you Sunday through Thursday, and then I get Friday and Saturday? Can we share custody of who we're, you can be the leader those days, and then I can be the leader the other days? This is often where we go wrong, is we want to split duty. Sure, he's God, of course. We'll give him the majority of the game time. But can I just come in at the end? Because I want to play too. If we are serious about contentment and letting go of control in our lives, we got to let Jesus play the whole game. And it's okay to do as Jesus did in the garden and say, Lord, my will is to go this way. And you know what? Sometimes people do pray that prayer with the Father, and the Father says, okay. But it's only okay because he says it's okay, and we follow him. There's nothing wrong with saying to the Lord, you've called me to do this, but I would like to do this instead. It's okay to have that conversation with him, so long as at the end of the conversation you say, nevertheless, your will be done. God does not want us to be robots who just blindly follow him. It's okay to express your opinion and your view of things with him, just so long as at the end of it all we say, all right, I gave my piece, I said what I think we should do, but you know what? You know best because you're God and I'm not. And as long as we end the conversation that way, we're great. We're great. But this is the secret to contentment. We have to follow his will and no Jesus plus me. No Jesus plus my dreams. No Jesus plus my will. No Jesus plus my goals. Is Jesus not enough for us? That is ultimately the question. And it's a horrifying question to face someday. I don't ever want to be in the judgment and God sums up our lives and says, why was my son not enough for you? Because I have no idea how you would ever answer that question. There's no good answer to that question. Why did you insist on your own way? Why was my son not enough for you? There's no answer to that question. I don't want to stand and have that conversation. I would rather say right here and right now, not my will, but yours. Jesus is enough for me. Yes. Let Jesus be enough for you. This is what he did. Paul makes it very clear 2 chapters earlier. Jesus humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Even when he was facing this, he said, not my will, but yours. If ever, it was ever understandable for somebody to say, Lord, I think we need to go my way on this, it's probably when you're facing a cross. And just the pain that's involved in that, the shame that's involved in that. If ever there was a time where we might say it's reasonable to say, God, this is too far, I can't follow you this far, it would be then. But Paul holds up the crucified Jesus and say, he submitted himself to the will of God, even though this was the will of God. And if Jesus submitted himself to this for us, then who am I to say, Lord, it's rainy outside, I don't think we should do this today? What have I faced that's anything close to what Jesus went through? So what right have I to say, Lord, my will today is to do this. I don't feel like doing what you want me to do, so I'm gonna do my thing today. But I'll get back with you tomorrow. Man, I can't do that. Jesus didn't insist on controlling his own life. If he had, it never would have led to his death on the cross and forgiveness of our sins. Never would have. Because anybody who came down here to control their own lives, to use his divinity for his own advantage, never would have led to the cross. Never would have led to the empty tomb. That's why that temptation, we look at these temptations in the wilderness with Satan is like kind of lightweight, like turn rocks, turn stones into bread. You know, like what kind of silly miracle is that? But again, it wasn't about the rocks and the bread, was it? Not at all. It was about, will you use your power for your own selfish enjoyment, or will it be reserved for the sake of others? It was a test of the character of God. Are you as selfish as Satan says you are? Or are you the real deal? Is God really love? This was the test. And then he proved it. He punctuated that sentence with an exclamation point on the cross. We don't need to pursue control. When we see Jesus on the cross, this is not Jesus exerting his control. This is Jesus giving up control to his Father. Everything he did was for the will of his Father. He showed us how to live that kind of life. And let me just tell you, Jesus' life was not some boring, plastic Christian life where he just smiled and waved at there was adventure in that life. There were ups and there were downs. There's times when he's kind of turning invisible and going through the crowd that wants to kill him. Like, this was an exciting kind of life. All right, sometimes we kind of churchify everything, and we got to Jesus just stayed polite and wore a suit everywhere, and he's flipping tables sometimes, he's sleeping in storms, he's going up to mountains, he's working miracles. Like, this is an exciting kind of life when we submit to the will of God. You're not resigning yourself to there's no fun in this kind of life. Like, there was no one who lived a more exciting life than Jesus, and he did it in 3.5 years. What's the dull point in the Gospels? It's a mixture of everything. So, again, if we kind of look at this, I think one of the lies the devil whispers to us is if you submit yourself to God, it's going to be boring. You're going to have far more adventures if you just do things your way. It's not true. It's not true. And here's the reason why. When you submit yourself to the will of God, not only will you have these adventures, you'll have these highs and lows, and you'll witness great and amazing things that you'll never be able to explain in purely naturalistic terms. Not only that, but you'll have that kind of life forever. I could do things my way, and I could probably have some fun times, right? But how long are they going to last? It's temporary at best. It's temporary at best. I want the kind of life Jesus had. It's not predictable. It's not plastic. It's not on the rails, it's very kind of staid and boring. It wasn't like that at all. It was an adventure. That's the kind of life I have. And it's the only kind of life that you're going to get if you submit yourself to God and his will for you. Don't be a backseat driver. Don't be a backseat driver with God. If you got him sit in the driver's seat, then let him drive. Don't reach over, grab the wheel. Don't sit in the back and be like, hey, I think you should do it this way or that way. Don't be that way. Just enjoy the view. Just enjoy wherever it is that he takes you. And that's when you find contentment. But so long as you have anxiety about trying to tell him how to do his business in your life, you're always going to be having peace just out of your reach. All right. I don't have it on slide, but I'll read this for you. This is from one of the founders of our church, Ellen White, very, very gifted woman. She says, the principle of worldlings, kind of an old saying, just people, worldly, the world. Principle of worldlings is to gather, to get all that they can, for selfish love of gain is the ruling principle of their lives. The result, she says, carried out, is crime and misery. She says that the purest joy is not found in riches, not where covetousness is always craving. And I love that word. It's because it's just, you meet people who are always craving. I want this. I need this goal. I'll be happy when I get here. Like, they're always just, there's a restlessness to it. Not where covetousness is always craving, but where contentment reigns and self-sacrificing love is the ruling principle. That's where you find contentment. Where self-sacrificing love is the ruling principle. This is the great absurdity of Christianity, is that we think that to get control means we got to grab the wheel. But the reality is, what Jesus shows us is the way you get to the throne, like the way you if you want power and happiness and all these sort of things, the way you get there is by giving it up. And it's counterintuitive, right? It makes no sense. But the way you get there, the way you ascend, the way you beat death, the way you get to sit on the throne of the universe is by not wanting to do those things. But you let God do them for you. And so that's what faith is all about. Do you trust God to handle your affairs for you? Do you trust God that He's going to bring you to where you need to be when you need to be there? Do you trust God that without your help, advice, input, opinion whatsoever, that He's going to take care of you and knows what's best for you? That's what it comes down to. So if you want to be content, if you feel troubled in your soul and you're like, I just don't know why I can't find peace in my life, it is, I think 100% chance it's because you're trying to control your outcome. You're trying to get yourself there. You're looking at Jesus saying, I see where heaven is. I'll drive halfway, you drive the other half. It ain't going to work. You'll never get there. You'll never get there. Just let go. Just let go and trust Him. That the one who died for you knows the way.
Yes, He does.
That if you want that resurrection life, there's only one person who's done it before, and it's not you, and He knows how to do it. So just trust Him. Just trust Him. That's what it comes down to. And just be at peace in your soul. Have contentment that whether you have much or whether you have little, you're all right, because you're not looking for Jesus plus something else. Let Jesus be enough for you. Let's pray. Father above, it's an easy thing to say, and it's something I'm sure we all hear, and we're like, yeah, duh. But boy, oh boy, when it comes to practicing it, when it comes to living it, it's a hard ask. Because the tendency in all of us to grab that steering wheel, to tell God when to turn right, so strong. So strong. So I just pray, Lord, that if we're wrestling with this, if we don't have peace in our souls, this peace that passes all understanding, will you give us the courage to give up? And in the place of that control, give us what you've promised, contentment. That's the secret that we're looking for. We thank you for this. We thank you for the peace that's coming, for the peace that's already here. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Thanks for taking the time to watch this message. I want to invite you, though, to join our next Sabbath stream. They happen live on Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. Central. You can find it right here on YouTube or on Facebook, or you can download our Peoria Adventist app and watch it on your phone, iPad, or Apple TV. I think even Roku is in there somewhere. Anyways, may God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you next Sabbath.